Great. So I just wanted to start tonight by doing a quick land acknowledgement. The San Joaquin Valley lies on unceded Yokuts and Miwoks lands, as you can see here on the map. And as we think about the state of the air here in the San Joaquin Valley, we really have to think about the peoples before us, the original stewards of the land, who we can really look towards for some answers on how to clean the air as we kind of dive into this presentation. We must also recognize that the Miwoks and the Yokuts peoples are still here. They're still very much embedded in our communities. And we must recognize, the need to uplift the ways that they had originally taken care of the land as we think about solutions for cleaning the air in the valley. So a little bit about the Central Valley Air Quality Coalition. We envision a healthy, safe, and economically prosperous valley where chronic air pollution and epidemic sickness is no longer here. Due to poor air quality, we envision a healthy and safe San Joaquin Valley for all. So we're interested in just knowing a little bit about the folks that are on the call today. So please feel free to drop in your name, any affiliations that you have, and we're definitely interested in where do you live in the valley or what part of the valley you are most familiar with. So please drop that in the chat and we can get to know you all a little bit. Great. All right, in the interest of time, again, please drop your name, any affiliations, where do you live in the valley, your favorite place in the valley. You are definitely interested in knowing where everybody is joining us from. So before we get started with the state of the air report and diving into some discussion related to that report, just wanted to give a brief high-level overview of the San Joaquin Valley and really emphasize how diverse the valley is, with 4.3 million people speaking so many different languages, so many different ethnicities. The San Joaquin Valley is absolutely enormous, with 27,000 square miles. From north to south, it's 250 miles. So it's definitely a challenge to really demonstrate and uplift the variations of community members that are in the valley, but we all kind of come together when we speak about air, because a lot of our communities are located in a lot of disadvantaged communities, and all of us are essentially, breathing the same air, and in that ways we're kind of united. There's three major drivers for the economy in the San Joaquin Valley, which also happen to be three of the major drivers for air pollution in the San Joaquin Valley. And the acronym that we've come up with here at CVAC is DOA, which some can see as dead on arrival. And these are impacting our health. So development, whether that's warehouses coming in, popping up into the valley. There's a lot of warehouse proposals in the Fresno area recently, and Stanislaus County that we've been hearing of. A really prominent example is that we have an IKEA distribution center in the San Joaquin Valley, Kern County, Kings County, but we don't have any IKEAs here. Then we have oil and gas development that's majorly affecting the southernmost region of the valley, but also affecting other areas in the valley. And that is definitely another major driver for the health and poor health of San Joaquin Valley residents who are located in really close proximity to these oil and gas developments, as well as agriculture, where a lot of us, we're surrounded by agriculture and the effects related to whether it be their cropping, their crop gathering, or their pesticides, things like that. So here's some just quick little images on the three different sources of pollution and the drivers of our economy here in the valley. Along with those air pollution issues, there come a lot of social and environmental issues, leading to high levels of persistent and concentrated poverty, and some of the highest food insecurity rates in California, despite being one of the most agriculturally prosperous places in the world. We still have some of the highest food insecurity. We're seeing contaminated air, water, and soil as a result of our poor environmental surroundings and unequal health and costs as associated with that contaminated air, water, and soil. And let's see, with that is the end of kind of our background on the San Joaquin Valley, and I'll stop sharing my screen and pass it off to Will to talk a little bit about the implications of the state of the air report for the San Joaquin Valley.
Great. Well, thank you, Cynthia, so much for having me. I'm going to try to get back and share my screen like I did in the practice run. And are we good? Excellent. Thanks, Connie. So first off, I'm Will Barrett. I'm with the American Lung Association. I'm the National Senior Director for Clean Air Advocacy. And I've been with the Lung Association for 13 years, and I'm based in Sacramento.
Una asociación para los pulmones de América. Vamos a hablar acerca de este reporte del 2022 y lo que hemos visto sobre el estado del aire en este valle y cómo ha cambiado con respecto al tiempo. Voy a explicarles nada más las áreas claves del reporte.
So this is our 23rd annual report, and what we really try to do is highlight the local progress and challenges.
Nosotros estamos aquí tratando de enfatizar la calidad del aire en cada uno de los lenguajes. Queremos dar información pública para que llegue esto a todas las personas, enfocarnos principalmente en el área en las concentraciones de ozono y las partículas que contaminan. Esto nos han dado unos grados medimos 935 condados y monitoreamos 3,142 condados. Esto nos da una información de 25 áreas por metro y donde también nos informa dónde está la más grande, donde hay más contaminación. Aquí vemos con respecto a la contaminación del aire cómo puede afectar a los niños y a los adultos de diferentes maneras. Con respecto al área respiratoria, al sistema respiratorio, pueden tienen asma, ataques de asma, cáncer de pulmones, respiraciones cortas, problemas para respirar, tos o agitación a la hora de respirar. También hay otros resultados que son muertes prematuras, infecciones y mucha susceptibilidad a las infecciones, ataques en el corazón, paros cardíacos, impedimento en las funcionalidades cognitivas, desórdenes en el metabolismo, nacimientos antes de término o nacimientos de bebés con bajo peso. Queremos también enfocarnos en las comunidades de color para que ellos tengan menor impacto, porque siempre son los que tienen mayor impacto de esto. Nacionalmente vemos que 4 de 10 personas de americanos viven en lugares con niveles insalubres de aire contaminado.
this is over 40% of all Americans, 137 million living in communities that are impacted by unhealthy air. In California, we know
En California, estos niveles son muchos más altos.
It's 100%. So we know that the national numbers are what they are.
Los niveles son muy grandes porque han estado creciendo, especialmente en la parte central de California. Ahorita vemos que este impacto a veces no impacta igualmente e impacta a veces más a otras personas. La gente de color son 3.6 veces más propensas a ser impactados por esta contaminación que la gente blanca que vive en condados que están muy alejados a las fábricas y casi no reciben, apenas llegan al número 3. Y de nuevo, estos son números en el condado y esperamos que mejoren, pero estamos manejando todo el área de las comunidades. Y esto nos dice que necesitamos poner más atención a estas necesidades.
This year's report covered air quality data from 2018 through 2020. That's the data set that we use for air quality monitoring information that we get from the US EPA. And what we see is that these are
Lo que estamos viendo aquí que los 3 años que han estado cubiertos, que han sido cubiertos por el estado del aire 2022, se evalúa con respecto a los 7 días más calientes que se han presentado de manera global. Porque han habido mucho incremento de incendios, explosiones, y entonces eso promueve que haya más rápidamente un cambio climático. Por ejemplo, nada más en California, estas ciudades dominan más en las partes de contaminación. Y siempre dominan todas las listas de las ciudades en el país, porque tienen, por ejemplo, una partícula de contaminación, 8 están en el aire, son 8 de 10. Y después también hay otros que en el área, cuando se mide a nivel anual, California está en el número 7 de 10. Hay muchos reportes que esta región de Fresno tiene el aire más sucio de todo el país. Esto es un reporte de los expertos. Están hablando de niveles anuales y han llegado a esta conclusión.
And Bakersfield actually appears on the top 3 for all 3 pollutants. So just putting a kind of a fine point on the specific challenges in the rankings that we see for the San Joaquin
Hay
Valley.
diferentes números que se miden, pero sí, California y Fresno pertenecen a los números más altos. Aquí estamos viendo una medición de las ciudades más contaminadas y en cuestiones de término corto. Y vemos que el número 1 es Fresno. Una de las 25 más ciudades a corto término de contaminación es en el western de Estados Unidos, oeste de Estados Unidos. También San José, San Francisco, que está en el número 4 y cerca más al área del borde y el área central. Vamos a hablar un poquito más de esto y vamos a ir revisando los niveles por condado, de condado a condado.
That's why you don't see Stockton or Modesto listed here separately, like maybe 10 years ago in the report you might have. So I just wanted to point that out. And then on the issue of wildfires, throughout the
Con
Western
respecto a los
our most polluted
incendios forestales,
and
ha habido un movimiento
for spikes and unhealthy particle pollution are now
y esto ha traído obviamente muchísima contaminación.
It's Pittsburgh on the East
Ha
Coast.
bajado un poco los niveles, especialmente en la costa oeste,
25 are now
pero
cities, and
las ciudades del
all of
oeste
several years by
han sido muy impactadas por estos incendios forestales, más aparte toda la contaminación que se genera por las fábricas. Ajá. Aquí vemos las ciudades más contaminadas a nivel anual y las que tienen una contaminación por partículas más altas. Bakersfield en California, Fresno. Ajá. Las principales fuentes de contaminación son los automóviles, fábricas, el equipo de agricultura, las chimeneas, el sistema de calentamiento de las casas y obviamente los incendios forestales. Con respecto al smog y la área de ozono, la capa de ozono, tenemos aquí un reporte de 23 años. Lo primero, en 2006 ha ido cambiando, pero bueno, en primer lugar tenemos a Los Ángeles, en Long Beach, y es la ciudad más contaminada. Y después también tenemos a Fresno como número 4, Visalia número 3 y Bakersfield número 2. El reporte se basa en cuál ha sido el proceso, cuáles son los retos que tenemos a alcanzar. Y bueno, esto ha sido lo más, hay algunos días que han sido los más limpios, recientemente, pero eso varía. Y vamos a estar viendo a ver cómo van a funcionar y qué resultados tiene y cómo va progresando todos los esfuerzos que se han conjuntado. Aquí en el Valle de San Joaquín tenemos las claves, las llaves, la clave, son todos los valles, los condados del valle. Están en el número 3, en el nivel 3. Se han hecho diferentes adecuaciones, mejoras, y se han visto las principales en el valle comparado con los años próximos. Ese es el reporte que tenemos. Y han habido condados que han recibido mejoras, que se han reflejado mejoras en la capa de ozono. Es el último reporte. El valle continúa teniendo muchos retos. Como nación también hay muchos retos que se tienen que superar. Han habido varias cosas buenas y muchos trabajos buenos que han tenido éxitos, pero bueno, tenemos que mejorar, y si agregamos las condiciones de salud de las poblaciones sensibles, tenemos 4.3 millones de personas, que es la población en el Valle de San Joaquín. Estas personas tienen un riesgo porque tienen ya condiciones preexistentes como asma pediátrico, asma en los adultos, y todo eso se refleja en las personas, mucho más en personas de color, personas que tienen pobreza, y lo hacen pues cada vez con mayor nivel. Y bueno, yo les doy esto porque pienso que es importante.
resources we do have in the report on our website, lung.org/SOTA.
Aquí les comparto
Here you see the Fresno County ranking number as the number
una información del condado de Fresno. Es el número uno, el condado número uno en Estados Unidos, que es donde se manejan partículas que no son sanas. Ajá. Y esto fue una medición de la capa de ozono, las partículas contaminantes en el aire durante 24 horas y también de manera anual. El resultado fue falla. Ajá. Fresno era número 2 y el número 1 fue Abasco. Hemos estado viendo muchísimo movimiento en esto. Kern County, el condado de Kern entra en número 2 con niveles de ozono y partículas contaminantes en el aire. Esto todo, la afectación se ocasiona por los incendios forestales. Desafortunadamente, ese es nuestro reporte. El condado de Kern es el número 2, el condado número 2 con partículas más dañinas en el aire. Este es un reporte anual. Esto varía en las categorías, pero bueno, es lo que se ve. El condado Kings está, el condado Kings está en el número 3. De nuevo, esto ha aumentado. Desde el último reporte ha aumentado tristemente. No me sorprende que Fresno también haya cambiado y hayan variado esos números. Hay un nivel muy alto de contaminación. Y también, desafortunadamente, esto ha aumentado por la actividad forestal. El condado de Merced entra en el número 17. Y desafortunadamente, pues esto ha sido durante el curso y el reporte. Y todo ha sido pues más persistente. Mientras más hay más población, más fábricas. San Joaquín, el condado de San Joaquín entra en las 10, dentro del condado número 10 con más alta contaminación. El condado Stanislaus entra en el número 9. Y también ha estado cambiando durante el tiempo, pero vemos otra vez que en los últimos años ha ido aumentando. Ajá, y de nuevo son las condiciones forestales más las fábricas. El condado Tulare está en número 5 y vemos que todavía está en unos números que fallan, que no son sanos, con respecto también a la capa de ozono. Pero bueno, vemos que ha bajado un poquito y luego se ha mantenido estable y luego ha bajado un poquito. Ha habido progreso y eso es muy buenas noticias. Pero bueno, tenemos que ver que las políticas se refuercen, se hagan todavía más severas para que esto ya no siga sucediendo. Tenemos 2 más. Y bueno, aquí es lo que vemos, el reporte de las de los condados con mayor contaminación de los Estados Unidos, cómo se maneja en un rango de Estados Unidos las partículas anuales, y luego en los días, con respecto a los días, y luego con respecto a los días de la capa de ozono. Estas son las medidas. Desafortunadamente, esto es una manera rápidamente de medir, es una información muy rápida. Y bueno, lo voy a dejar aquí, mi correo electrónico, por si ustedes quieren mandarme alguna pregunta, algún correo electrónico. Yo se los puedo contestar con mucho gusto. Les agradezco la oportunidad que yo pueda para ofrecerles esta información, y deseo realmente que este programa mejore y que sea todo para la mejora de toda la comunidad y los condados de California.
Anyone wants to jump in with any questions?
Yeah, great. Thanks, Will. Does anybody have any questions or comments that they want to uplift right now?
Connie, I think I saw your hand.
Yeah, I
Yeah?
do.
Okay.
I'm curious about what federal legislation you are backing to address air pollution issues.
Thanks. That's a great question. We don't. I will speak more to the U.S. EPA regulatory agenda that we're really deeply following, and one of our key top priorities right now is pushing the Biden administration on stronger standards for particle pollution. So strengthening the national ambient air quality standards for particle pollution. That's actually, we have a petition to the Biden administration as kind of our key ask for the State of the Air report. We also are, we're pushing for stronger standards for ozone. There was a release of the ozone review today that we're going to dig into. And we know that those policies drive cleanup, drive more action, and also that they need to protect public health. They need to be set to the latest science. They need to be set to protect our most vulnerable populations. And the Lung Association, we just don't believe that we're there yet by any means, and that those standards all need to be strengthened. The other things that I'll mention is, we're really closely tracking the US EPA's work on setting a low NOx standard for heavy duty trucks. That is something that a lot of our organizations, folks on this call, were really involved in the 2020 California standard for cutting pollution from new heavy duty truck engines. And we're hoping to see a very strong turnout or result, from US EPA as they're moving to adopt a trucking standard. We're also looking closely at the policies that are targeting light duty vehicles, and really want to see standards set going forward that really set the transition forward for zero emission vehicles across the board. And those are, I'll just leave it there. Those are some of the key things we're really focused on right now. There's a whole long list, but from my seat in Sacramento, those are the ones that I'm most involved in.
Well, so my interest is a carbon tax. I'm with Citizens Climate Lobby. So wonder what your thoughts are on a federal price on carbon.
Yeah, I think that's probably a question better directed to my our legislative staff back east, but happy to dig into it and circle back with you, Connie.
Great, thanks.
Yeah, thanks, Connie. I also had a quick question, Will. Gave a lot of great information, and I was just wondering if you have some resources from American Lung Association that you can share, and we can all share with folks on protecting our health. We talked a lot about, you just mentioned a lot of need to be health protective. And I'm just wondering if ALA has any, resources that they can share with us, or drop in the chat on ways we can protect ourselves and share that information, and if it's available in other languages.
Yeah, I'd be happy to start plugging some things in, but also to follow up with some resources for the listserv, whether that's the report or the petition to US EPA, or other, opportunities that are coming up. I know we just went through a series of public hearings, but, we're on the lookout for more opportunities to speak directly to federal policymakers on these issues, and we'll definitely be sure to share those around. Another thing too is we're working on updating some fact sheets to reflect the new information that I've talked about, and we'll make sure to get those out as well. So.
Yeah, thanks, Will. Another question, before we started recording, Connie was talking about how Valley Air Pollution Control District kind of briefly brought up this report, but didn't really dive too deep into it. Just kind of wondering how we can use this report and uplift it in those kind of spaces when we speak with like decision makers, not only as like advocates, but as Valley residents, how we can, uplift this report and the findings from it.
Sure, and I'll just note before I jump into the answer too much is that when we're putting the reports together, we do reach out to all of the air districts and clean air agencies around the country and get their help, and making sure the data is correct based on what US EPA has, and get their feedback. And the Valley Air District has always participated in that process, so we do appreciate kind of them taking a look and offering up their thoughts on the rollout of the report and how it looks and all of that. So it's nice to hear that it was referenced, but I think as far as a tool, an advocacy tool, I think that the report really does try to help, show the trend line, show, where, we've come, where we're going, what are the challenges we know that are still there, and really put them in a public health, framework. One of the key things in the report is a review every year of the latest science and latest research on air pollution health effects. And this year, we did spend quite a bit of time on the latest research on the health impacts on pregnant people of air pollution. And certainly these are, the bottom line is that, we all know somebody in our family who's more deeply impacted by pollution, whether that's a personal health challenge, or somebody in your family might be pregnant right now, or, seniors' kids. And so it's really helping to put the data into human terms, I think, in ways that can help with advocacy. And we do have sections in the report as well on, what are some of the key local, state, federal policy actions that can be taken to help address our air pollution challenges. So I hope that helps.
Yeah, thanks, Will. Does anybody have any other questions that are on here with us, or any comments that they'd like to make?
Excuse me, I have a question. And yeah, hey, Pedro here. I have my video off, just internet stuff. But so I guess what are some of the biggest kind of like positive results from this? I mean, it just seems like you've been working on this for a very long time, and I'm just wondering, just to maybe like ground this in the larger practice of y'all doing the report. Like, can you maybe just speak to some of the outcomes over the years that like this work has like directly contributed to?
Sure, I think that's a great question, and it's one of the several kind of what we call signature reports. We have a similar report on tobacco control and a similar report on lung cancer. And what we try to do is use these reports every year to really raise awareness and bring a lot of focus onto air pollution, try to cut through the noise of everything else that's going on in the world, that we try to look at the State of the Air Release Day as a day to really focus on air pollution challenges. We know that a lot of us work on them every day, and face these challenges every day, given where we all live. But, we know that by creating a lot of focus, a lot of media attention, I know, Pedro, you mentioned you'd seen some of the local coverage of the report. And, you know, we see every year this being one of the reports that generates a lot of local, state, and national coverage, and really tries to bring a lot of focus to these areas. And then, you know, we use the report throughout the year, not just on release day, but, you know, to really try to help tell the story in California that, you know, 98% of us continue to live in communities that are impacted by unhealthy air. And we use that with policymakers, legislators, local officials to really try to say, this is an unacceptable condition. We need to double down. And given the fact that climate change is making the job of cleaning our air that much more difficult, we have to keep our eye on the ball of the main sources of pollution that are causing our local health challenges, our local disparities, and also deal with the fact that we have to work harder to get to the same clean air benefits. So that's what we try to use the report to really highlight, you know, that we are making progress. The Clean Air Act has been working for 5 decades, but we still have a long way to go. And a key to that is highlighting the fact that our federal ambient air quality standards are not health protective enough and are not driving enough challenge or change to address the challenge.
Thank you.
And, you know, I'll just note, because we talked a little bit about it earlier too, like Dr. Arambula, when he was giving his presentation of his legislation related to the Clean Air Act and attainment of standards, you know, he used the state of the air report findings, the local findings that I just walked through actually, to highlight the importance of making changes in the way that we address air pollution locally and at the state level. Con?
Yeah, I just wonder, does the report talk much about the actual connections between air pollution and climate change?
Yes, quite a bit. We know, I put a slide up earlier that basically an image pulled right from the report, again, that, you know, climate change is first and foremost a public health crisis that we need to address. It's making the job of cleaning the air more difficult. It's threatening all of the progress we've made over the 50 years of the Clean Air Act, for example. And again, yeah, there's quite a bit of discussion of climate change impacts. Increasingly in the report, we're dealing with the you know, the issues of wildfires and related, you know, particle exposures and that kind of thing within that section, unfortunately. But yes, a short answer is yes. We've talked about that quite a bit in the report.
And I'm just wondering if you're seeing any success. And it sounds like, I mean, I'm assuming you're not in on the lobbying side of things, but if you have any, if you're aware of successes in convincing lawmakers of the connections between climate change and air pollution, because locally we're not seeing much of that.
Well, I think that it resonates differently in different audiences, right? I think when, you know, when we talk about climate change, sometimes it is well understood. And I think there's no question that when you talk about air pollution, that's very well understood. I think people understand, you know, the local impacts of pollution. Whether they act on that is a different question. But, you know, I think if you're standing next to, you know, a dairy or a major trucking route or a refinery, you know that there's unhealthy air impacts happening right there, and you can understand that. On climate change, when we're trying to explain that, you know, we have this baseline of unhealthy air, and that baseline is not going to be much easier to deal with because the climate is changing, because we're seeing hotter temperatures, more ozone formation, more wildfires, and more smoke, or more drought that's going to make, you know, put a lot of pressure on particle pollution. Several years ago, I think it was 2012, where we had a big inversion layer in the northern San Joaquin Valley, Sacramento Valley, and we saw weeks on end of unhealthy particle pollution days because of drought conditions. And, you know, within the report, I'll point to like Phoenix, we saw a huge spike, one of the worst years ever in last year's report, and that was drought related. It was an inversion layer, similar to what San Joaquin Valley deals with, that just created I think it was maybe one of the worst days that we've seen in the report for Phoenix. So it's that kind of, unfortunate increasing number of examples of the crossover of climate and air pollution.
And how sound is the science now about perhaps the increased likelihood of inversion layers and weather patterns that just park themselves over areas and create, the potential for bad air quality or poor air quality? I know my understanding is that still is kind of controversial, whether that's climate related or not, but I'm wondering if that science is improving.
I mean, I feel as though we learn more every day, every month, every year. Our report really doesn't focus on the climate science impacts as much as the health impacts or health research, peer-reviewed literature. But yeah, I mean, I think there's no question that as we learn more, we have to just adjust our approach to how we deal with air pollution, regulation, investment, mitigation, those kind of areas that are all becoming more urgent as a result of the growing challenges.
Yeah, thanks, Connie and Will, for those questions and answers. I think I have another question about, besides, this webinar tonight and sharing this with CVAC members, what else is American Lung doing to, share this information with communities, especially those people of color, low-income communities that we were highlighting tonight?
Yeah, we're trying to do more and more briefings like this. The next one on the calendar is actually for next week. It's a jointly hosted event with California Nurses for Environmental Health and Justice, the new nursing advocacy organization. So we're doing a presentation with them next week, largely focused on state of the air and wildfire impacts, to try to help explain that to health professionals who are very much committed to health and environmental justice issues. So we're trying to help tell the story as broadly as we can, and certainly I'm more than happy to do more presentations on this every year. And I think it just really tries to help provide a bit more new data. We know everyone who's dealing with unhealthy air knows this in their lungs. There's no question about it. But to the extent that we can help with providing a new angle or new emphasis on it from a larger perspective through the media or whatever, that's really what we're happy to help with.
Yeah, great. Thank you. When I share this recording and the resources with folks, I'll definitely make sure to highlight, reach out to you if anybody wants any briefing in their own community. So it's 5:52. Does anybody else have a last question or comment that we can get, that we can discuss and before we start to wrap up? Rosanna, Woody, Tom, do you guys have any comments or questions or anything you'd like to add before we start kind of wrapping up?
Well, I invite anyone to reach out directly if they have any follow-up questions or want more resources out of the report or anything else we're up to, but really do appreciate the opportunity.
Yeah, I was just going to say thanks for, again, providing all that information. I'm actually going to jump onto the Environmental Justice Advisory Group for the Air District. We have our bi-monthly meeting. Yeah, I might reach out about actually presenting to them. That might be
good idea.
Something, yeah. I'm sure a lot of them have looked at the report, but I'm also sure that there's some of them that haven't. And it'd be good to kind of all get the same information in one meeting, get everybody on the same page. Thanks.
Great, thanks, Tom.
And I will check with the Sierra Club and see if they'd like to have a presentation too.
Okay, great. Rosanna, I saw that you came on camera. Did you want to add anything else before we start?
Rosanna, you were on mute. I didn't catch what you were saying.
Sorry, I always do that. Thank you very much for the information. Sometimes I just talk too much. Appreciate the resource. I mean, over the years, it's just been so helpful to have the numbers to go to because, as we know, writing grants and producing is all about the numbers. So you've made our jobs a lot easier to navigate. Thank you.
Well, that's wonderful to hear, and I'm glad you mentioned the grants because I do think it's a helpful resource for kind of expressing the problem. Again, with updated data every year. So that's wonderful to hear, really helpful.
Yeah, we refer
feedback.
to it quite a bit whenever we're doing our public presentations, and it's always a highlight to be able to refer to your standards. So thank you.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
All right.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Thank you.
Thanks, Connie. So we did record this presentation and this discussion. We'll upload it to the CVAC YouTube and share it with the CVAC main once it's uploaded, along with like the resources that the full report, the website, some resources that Will is gonna follow up with me on, and we can wrap up, and I'll give you 4 minutes of your time back.
Okay,
Thanks so much.
thanks, Cynthia.
Thank you, everybody. Have a good evening.
You too.